As I'm sure you know, China has made a reputation of themselves for being kind of shameless copycats in some instances when it comes to car design. So today I want to show you 5 insane copies of, mostly in this case, German luxury cars and the Chinese version of them, and then show you what was said about these cars individually in the press. So let's start with the bike BJ80 right here. Now there is no mistaking what this is actually copying. Obviously it's a Chinese version of the G-Wagon. Now design-wise it might look almost close to identical to a G-Wagon, especially if you look at it from afar, or if you like blur your eyes like this, you can't really tell if it's a G-Wagon or a bike BJ80 here. But when it comes to the technology and the power and so on, it's totally different than a G-Wagon. I'm going to talk about that in just a second here. So here we have the G-Wagon. I just want to show you the similarities between these two and just how crazy shameless of a copy this is of the G-Wagon. Just look at details such as this intake right here. This is obvious that the Chinese designers and Bike, the company, has really studied the design of the G-Wagon to really get the details right, and then maybe add a little bit of angles to these details to make it look different and not infringe on any copyright issues. But sometimes they succeed with that, sometimes they don't, which we're going to talk about in a second here as well. But let's have a look at the front view here. This is where things get interesting. Look at how much creativity the designers had designing that front end. The designer who made the grille must have been super happy because he got free range to create whatever he wanted, as long as it doesn't look like the exact replica of a G-Wagon right there. They also managed to get a little angle here, as you can see, in these front headlights. So it looks a little angrier, I would say, than the G-Wagon. And on top of that, we have the same kind of boxiness that we have on the G-Wagon. The traditional angles of everything. The hood sticks out the same way as it does on G-Wagon. You have 3 windows in the side. And if we look at the rear, we have the same kind of integration with the spare wheel that we have on the G-Wagon. However, if you look at the windows here, something becomes interesting here. You look at the third window, this window right here, it's a lot smaller than it is on the original G-Wagon. So if you have a dog in the rear, they don't have the luxury that the dogs in the G-Wagon have, because they have a smaller window to look out from. And one specific detail here where I think they went crazy on the bike BJ80 is the treatment of the taillights. If we look at the taillights here, you can see that this is actually vertical. It stands up, while on the G-Wagon they planted it horizontal. So that's another thing that I think the designers thought that if we just tilt it up, if we tilt up the rear taillight, it's going to make a huge difference on this design right here. And I'm not sure if they succeeded with that, because it doesn't help to take away from the fact that this is actually a G-Wagon straight up copy. You also have the same kind of shoulder line right here wrapping around the corner here. That goes exactly on the bike BJ80 here. So what are they exactly saying about this car in the press? Well, let's have a look. Now, as if copying the original G-Wagon, the standard G-Wagon, wasn't enough, Bike went all the way and copied the Mercedes-AMG G63 6x6 with their own version, and here it is. When we go into the details and the performance, we see that there are some small differences when it comes to that. For example, this AMG here has a twin-turbo V8 putting out, let's see, 544 horses, while the Buck BJ80 6x6 has a 2.3 liter turbocharged inline 4, good for about 250 horsepower. So if these were face to face in performance and hill climb acceleration and so on, I'm pretty sure the Mercedes would win, and there wouldn't be a copy of the performance. At least Mercedes have that going for them. Next up, we have one of my favorites, and this is the Geely GE. So this is obviously a straight up copy inspired by the Rolls-Royce Phantom. There is no denying that. And here we have the two next to each other. I like to just compare the original with the Chinese version. And even the hood ornament is similar. The lady in the hood ornament just has a different pose. But even to that detail, Chinese version copied the Rolls-Royce even to the detail of the hood ornament. Now the thing with the Geely GE here, I don't necessarily think this is a bad looking car, as I thought of the Mercedes G copy, which I don't think is a good looking design. This though, it looks pretty good. But it's pretty easy to make a good looking car when you copy it from the Rolls-Royce Phantom here, which I think is a beast of a car. And this Phantom to me is one of these cars that really embodies the category of which is supposed to be in with this design. It expresses opulence and elegance and luxury just by looking at the car. I like the styling of the Phantom. I think it looks massive, majestic, elegant, and they kind of lose a lot of that if you look at the rear here of the Geely GE. It doesn't look as massive and imposing as the Rolls-Royce Phantom, and obviously we're thankful for that. The thing that's specific with the Phantom here is, to me, has always been the massive C-pillar here. If you look at the width of this thing, it's one of the thickest C-pillars I've ever seen, and they didn't translate that into the Geely GE right here. But other than that, I mean, it's clearly inspired by the Phantom. It's really funny to see. I'm really amused or entertained by the Chinese copies. They're always fun to see just how much is copied and what they left to the designers to have some fun with. This a little bit more than the G-Class, but at the same time it's clearly inspired by the Phantom. So let's see what they said about this in the press. So this is pretty funny. Geely doesn't see the similarity that's got Rolls-Royce considering legal action between these two cars. Geely spokeswoman told the AFP they're actually different. People may feel they are the same at first glance. Yes, but the details are certainly different. And Rolls-Royce said they understand that due to the huge price and quality disparity between the Phantom, which is $365,000, and the GE, $44,000, there is likely to be very little in the way of confusion or competition between the two. However, if I was Rolls-Royce and I saw someone copying our designs to this extent, I would still be pissed, even though the GE costs almost 10 times less than the cars that we design. I would still think this is not cool and would probably push this further, and I think that's what Rolls-Royce is doing here as well. Next up we have the Landwind X7. So this is clearly an inspired design of the Land Rover Evoque, the first generation. I mean, the copy, it's almost like they took the same CAD files and just built the same CAD files, and then all the small trim pieces is the only thing that they actually changed. I can't imagine being a designer for a project like this, how boring it must be to have the brief from the boss saying make a Range Rover Evoque, but just tweak some tiny details in the grille and call it a day. And that's your job as a designer for this project. I mean, just look at even this little detail here, like we have on the G-Wagon as well. This is exactly the same, the positioning, and then you have this line here that goes up here is the same. You have the same kind of bodywork lines here, and the proportions, this has to be a identical copy, the roofline of the Evoque right here. I can't see any differences, and also the coloring, the blacked out A-pillar, and all these small details, just I don't understand how they can be so shameless in their copying of cars. And I just wanted to show you the rear end here as well. It looks pretty much identical to the Evoque. You have a little bit of different styling in the trunk here, but it's such small details that it doesn't really, I mean, if you were to see this from afar, you would definitely think this is an Evoque here as well. So let's see what they have to say about the Landwind X7 in the press. Land Rover actually went in and sued Landwind here, or whoever makes this car, for copyright infringement, and they actually won. So the Range Rover Evoque inspired model has been pulled from sale, and Landwind will need to pay compensation to Land Rover. So this is pretty cool. I like when, even though they're so far away and they're in China, you can still take legal action and get these things sorted. And I think that's the right way to do here, especially with almost identical copies like this one. So according to the court, similarities between the two cars caused confusion among customers. I can definitely see that. The Landwind was launched in 2015, and it was immediately apparent that the Chinese company had copied Evoque's exterior and interior as well, not the mechanical underpinnings, of course. So that's pretty cool that Land Rover actually won this this suit here. Now this is an interesting one. This is called the xianghuan CEO. Now if we look at it from the front view here, it kind of looks like this actually reminds me of a Lexus or something like that, the RX, the early version of the RX. And then if we move further back here, you can see that it more and more becomes from Lexus right here, and then it turns in to BMW 100% in the rear, which is so weird and interesting to look at. It just confuses my mind because you can clearly tell that this is inspired by the BMW X5, the first generation, which I think is probably one of the best looking X5s designed to date. I love this design. It looks like a beefy SUV, and for the purpose that it's supposed to be in, you know, city traffic. It's not really an off-road going car. With the beefy 4.6 engine and the 20-inch or the larger wheels of this generation, I think it looked fantastic. And can you just look at the rear view here? It's so interesting to see what lines carried over to the copy, and basically all of them in this case. You have the same line here, right here. You have the same line here. The dip right here is exactly the same. You have a line right here that goes here as well, and a little change. Same thing here. The designers thought, okay, listen, we can't straight up take the supplier of BMW and ask them for the taillights from the X5 and apply to ours. We need to make a little bit of difference here, and this is what they did. They added this part down here to make this car stand out, and I probably thought that was a fantastic little artistic touch to this design. The front view, confusing, doesn't look at all like the X5, but then the rear, they thought like, what car do we like that looks great in the rear? Now that we designed the front, let's just throw something on in the back that doesn't have any connection at all with the front, and let's see how that's going to turn out. And boom, we have the xianghuan CEO. So let's see what people are saying about this in the press. Comparing to the Land Rover and their court issues and suits, BMW actually lost this lawsuit right here with xianghuan CEO. Officials of the Chinese car maker do nothing more than to praise their model and sustain the car. He's not even close to the to the BMW X5, sporting numerous different elements visible from both the exterior and the interior. We're convinced the CEO wasn't a clone of the X5. Okay, we're happy to see our view supported by the court ruling. So that's very interesting, because if I look at this, and if I squint my eyes like this, I see a BMW X5 with some weird looking proportions. Styling wise, it's definitely an X5. And this was actually sold in Italy, so approximately 300 cars to 87 Italian dealers in 2009, I guess. So very interesting. I guess I never saw these in Italy when I was living there. I mean, they had 300 only, so I guess they're very rare. And I would probably be excited if I saw one of these, because they're such a crazy looking car. Now, I saved the best for last, and that is the Zotja RS9, and I don't even have to explain what car this is copying, because same thing here. It's ridiculously identical or close to the Porsche Macan, which we have right here, and it's just tiny tweaks to the designs. You still have the same elements in the front end, even to the details of the how many bars you have in this intake here. You have 2 bars here, you have 2 bars here, you have a light above it. The only difference here that I can see, I mean, yes, this line is inverted like this on the original Macan, and they have changed this line right here. They also changed this to rectangular and didn't want to deal with the LEDs, I guess, to save price, to reduce the price or something like that. A lot of quality pieces. I think the materials is where the price actually drops, because the styling looks identical to the Porsche Macan. You have a little bit of a different style in the headlights right here, as you can see. It has more of a triangular look to it, and this has more of a rounded look to it. Other than that, I mean, what's the point of releasing a car like this? As a designer, as a company, or even as a buyer, how would you feel buying this car? You know that it's based and want to be a Porsche Macan, but it just isn't. So same thing here. You have the same kind of little dip here. Artistic touch that separates the two here is this little dip right here, which I hope the designers are proud of that little change. right here. Let's zoom into this angle right here. I hope they're proud of it, because that's basically the only original thought that they put into this car. Looking at the Macan, you even have the same kind of styling down here on the rocker panel, and you have quad exhausts as well, and everything, the proportions, the angle of this. Same thing here. I think they have access to the CAD files. They maybe downloaded some 3D models of the Porsche Macan, told the designers to just copy this and see what we can make and tweak a little bit, go crazy on the taillights. That seems to be a rule for the Chinese designers here as well. Let's see if they have anything to say about this car in the press. So this is a Forbes article, and they say how a Chinese automaker, if this Siemens commercial can go away, how a Chinese automaker can clone Porsche and still get away with it. So they're bad for the standing reputation of China's automotive industry. Yes, they and about 100 other automakers in China, it seems, because it's nearly a perfect clone of the Porsche Macan. And this is pretty crazy. He went to a dealer, Zotja dealer in Beijing, and they were a dealer selling second-hand Porsches 100 meters away, making it for an easy comparison between the two. So let's have a look at the price here. Price-wise, however, there's a slight difference. It's probably a huge difference here. The SR9 runs between $16,000 starting price to $24,000. Porsche is 5 times more expensive, starting at $83,000 to $149,000. As you can see here, they clearly clone the interior as well. I can't tell the difference here just looking at it from this distance. I'm not sure which one is which. Same thing here. They probably have access to the interior models as well, just to make some small changes to it. The Zotja touchscreen is actually larger than Porsche's, and it also has a fully digital instrument panel, whereas the Porsche has only analog dials. Wow, look at that progressive Zotja. The SR9 is powered by a Mitsubishi source 2-liter turbo with 190 horsepower. And the Macan has a 2-liter turbo too, but with 252 horsepower. So same thing here. You have the differences in the technology, in the quality, and in the overall design feel of these clones. I think that's, looking at them, they look very similar, but obviously the feel, the driving experience is probably what sets these clones apart by miles from the original cars. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a kind of a different one, but I just came across some of these clones and I had to make a video showing you my top 5 favorites. There are a bunch of these. I'm happy to make more videos on these clones. If you want to see that, make sure you give this video a like so you know that you actually enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.